Hello, and welcome to episode number 217 of the Lines Podcast. My name is Matt Brown, joined by Stephen Andress. You can follow him on the Twitter machine at Stephen Andress1. You can follow me at Matt Brown M2. And of course, head over, subscribe, rate, review. If you're listening to this on the audio side, if you're listening on the video side of things, go ahead, hit the subscribe button down on YouTube. We really do appreciate that as well. Guys, we're going to give you some overarching thoughts on just betting golf the rest of the season. We're going to talk some NBA draft as well. We're going to look right now into some news and notes here coming out of the NFL. And listen, I understand it is the end of June. We're not going to get NFL games until September. I'm very well aware. However,
erroneous,
there might be
Matt. Erroneous.
Yes, there might be some of these numbers that are out there that you're, listen, before training camp starts, before buzz starts, before all the things like that, you might want to get some of these numbers in your account, and then you can go from there, right? I mean, listen, if you have some of these numbers and you want to buy off later on down the line, that is something you can do. So I am always looking in advance, right, of what to do. We'll also take a look at the very early NBA odds for next season after the Warriors have now hoisted their fourth trophy in 8 years. It is pretty amazing what they have done there in San Francisco. But yeah, let's kick things off here. First bit of news. Stephen, you and I, we've talked about on this pod that we were going to be, we were looking at least at the beginning to fade the Browns because we had assumed that we would be looking at least at some sort of suspension for Deshaun Watson, if not a season-long suspension for Deshaun Watson. And then here on, again, Tuesday, June the 21st, news comes through this morning that he has settled 20 of the 24 lawsuits that are against him. And so this is now coming down to, it looks like he's trying to fast track this, let the NFL go ahead and make a decision on if they want to do something from a personal conduct standpoint or whatever. But it looks like he's trying to make it to where there's not going to be any looming cases any longer over Deshaun Watson. And if that's the case, I don't know if we're going to be looking at a year-long suspension for him. I was kind of leaning towards that. I thought they would make an example of him. I thought it'd be one of those deals where you've got 24 lawsuits against you, hey, look, you're making the league look bad. We're going to go ahead and suspend you for a year. But, listen, if he gets all these taken care of, I don't know, 3-4 games, something like that.
I disagree with you. I still think we're looking at least half the season here. I mean, this is too little too late in my mind. He could have done this last offseason. He could have done this in the middle of last season when he was sitting out every game for the Houston Texans. And listen, better minds are going to disagree on this situation. You're going to have a million different opinions on this. Mm-hmm. What we do know is that there are still 4 outstanding, 4 that at this point in time have not agreed to keep everything confidential. The other 20 have agreed to keep it confidential. But they also, most of them, or at least a lot of them, to my understanding, have already talked to the NFL. So they have all of the testimony from a lot of these plaintiffs against Deshaun Watson. So from a numbers standpoint, as we record this on June 21st, Matt, you can't bet on any futures on the Cleveland Browns. I mean, they're still 25-1 to win the Super Bowl. They're 13-1 to win the AFC, plus 275 to win the AFC North. Even if Deshaun Watson happens to only be suspended for 4 to 6 games, like you think at this point, I can't bet those numbers. I mean, there's a good chance we might get a better number during his suspension if the Browns lose a few games. So it's a no action situation right now for me with the Cleveland Browns. And I am still skeptical that he's not going to be suspended for at least half the season. And my humble personal opinion, do still think a full season is on the table. And perhaps, obviously, if that happens, he would definitely appeal that.
Yeah, as you mentioned, we are brought to you by BetMGM. It is 25-1 at BetMGM for the Cleveland Browns. It's actually the best number that you can find. You can find a 13-1 at Rivers for them to win the AFC. You can find a plus 275 at PointsBet for them to win the AFC North if you are if you are so inclined. Again, you can find all this stuff very easy over at thelines.com. Click on the prop finder button and just type in Cleveland Browns and it'll bring you up all that stuff. So you can easily, compare the odds at the various sports books and find the best one out there. If you believe that maybe this is going to go away or whatever for Deshaun Watson. But what I think this mainly does though, Stephen, for me is it at least clears up, I think, and again, I'm just speculating here, but I do believe it does clear up to me a season-long suspension. I don't think he's going to get the full season now at this point. And with that, does that mean, do we look at, okay, you fade the Browns at the beginning of the year with what most likely looks like Jacoby Brissett starting at quarterback for them, Baker Mayfield looking like he's going to be dealt at some point here in the next month or two. And then do you look to try to get in season and back this team, or are you just not interested in the Browns at all? I mean, it is a hell of a division, maybe the toughest division in all of football. The AFC West would have something to say about that as well. But, it is, I'll put it this way. I was bullish on the Browns last year, as you well know, didn't work out, lost a lot of money on futures for them and things like that. I probably need to see what this version of the Browns looks like before I'd be willing to kind of get back in on them and whatever. So, I mean, look, maybe after 10 weeks of the season, Deshaun Watson's played 3 or 4 games for them and it looks like he is still the Deshaun Watson of old. Maybe that could spur some sort of in-season bet for me. But, again, we're also just assuming Deshaun Watson is going to be Deshaun Watson, which we can't say for sure.
Yeah. And if it is 4 games, it's a manageable first 4 games at Carolina, home against the Jets, home against Pittsburgh, who could still at that point be starting a rookie quarterback. We don't know. At worst, it's Mitch Trubisky, and at Atlanta with Marcus Mariota. So they could defense their way to a decent record there through 4 games. So if it is 4 games, then I would, and I am, if I am bullish on the Browns, which I'm not, but hypothetically, then yeah, it might be worth pulling the trigger earlier on a futures in the event that they still win those games early. And then the hype comes with Deshaun Watson. That number is going to get shorter. But just holistically, Matt, I think the AFC is loaded, man. Like if you look across that AFC, you could make cases for 8 to 10 teams to make the playoffs. And we saw last year that a team like the Bengals can get hot and go on a run and get to the Super Bowl. So I just think it's a murderer's road to get through the AFC side to get to the Super Bowl right now in this era of the NFL. And I'm more inclined to take a shot on a bigger number on an NFC team with some of the question marks that we have in that conference. Whether it be the Packers losing Devontae Adams or the 49ers have quarterback questions, or the Rams have just been running so pure with not much depth on their roster, but not having many injuries through the past couple of years. You could shoot holes in a lot. Tom Brady's 45 freaking years old for the Buccaneers. So you can make cases for a team to emerge out of the NFC a lot easier than you can on the AFC. So the only way I'd be interested in betting the Browns at this point is if it's sometime in the first quarter or the second quarter of the season, they get off to a slow start, Watson's coming back, and we get a heck of a lot juicier number. And even at that point, I'd probably only be interested in the AFC futures to have one less step to get to the final round of that bet, so to speak.
You mentioned Tom Brady, and the Bucks are going to be without at least 2 of the guys that got them to a pretty good point last year. Of course, we know Antonio Brown was gone before the season was even over last year. And then word comes through again this morning as well that Rob Gronkowski is going to go ahead and retire for a second time. Now, they did bring back Leonard Fournette. They do still have Mike Evans. They do still have Chris Godwin. They signed Russell Gage. And of course, Cameron Brate has been there forever, kind of playing that will he ever actually become something role at the tight end position for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You look on the defensive side of the ball, they've got Akeem Hicks. They've got Vita Vea. They've got Devin White. I mean, they've got Levante David, Shaq Barrett. I mean, it is not like this team, is devoid of talent by any stretch of the imagination. Does Gronk retiring make you think more, less, neutral, anything at all of the Tampa Bay Bucks?
No, because I was kind of already fading them going into the playoffs last season. I thought that Brady, I think there was evidence to support the argument that he was the product of an elite offensive line, that the production and the efficiency was going down a little bit. And yes, they almost came back against the Rams in that playoff game, but they were getting their butts kicked for a lot of that as well. So I don't think the ceiling is as high on the Buccaneers as it was in the first season when everything was just hitting on all cylinders in that second half of the year. I do think not having Antonio Brown is significant. He was a big part of that Super Bowl run, big part of their production. I do think not having Chris Godwin for what looks like at least the first month of the season is significant. I will say the one prop market I'm looking out for, I haven't found it yet, but I'm very curious what they're going to line Russell Gage at for his receiving yards total for the season, because that's an over I might be interested in. I think he's going to have the Chris Godwin role. And I think that there's a chance that he has the Antonio Brown role for the rest of the season when Godwin comes back. And Brady has already emphasized how important he thinks he is to the offense for the Bucks in 2022. So at that short of a number as the Bucks futures are right now, I'm not interested. There's some longer shots.
That's the thing. So looking right now, Super Bowl, they're plus 750 at the majority of the books out there. No, thank
How
you.
Can you
to win the
justify that over the Chiefs number?
Yeah.
Like look at the Chiefs number right now. How can you justify that?
The best number you can get on them to win the NFC is at Rivers at plus 350. I mean, like you're only getting 350 for them to win the NFC. The NFC South minus 286. Minus, guys, 286 is the best number you're going to get on them to win the NFC South. And look, I understand it's likely just a two-team race. It's probably just between them and the Saints. I get that. Maybe if Carolina acquires Baker Mayfield and Baker Mayfield can look more like 2019 or 2020 Baker Mayfield, that maybe the Carolina Panthers with, listen, a team that is not devoid of talent either, right? I mean, Stephen, when we look at DJ Moore, they've got Robbie Anderson, they've got Christian McCaffrey, they've got Chuba Hubbard who can take some of those carries away from Christian McCaffrey to try to keep him healthy. They also have Terrace Marshall who came into the league injured, so maybe in year 2 he can do something at the wide receiver position as well. So it's not like Carolina doesn't have talent, they just don't have a quarterback. And so, you know, if Baker can even be somewhat close to what he was in 2020, I don't think the Panthers are going to be just complete doormats or whatever. So minus 286 to me, and by the way, it's minus 300 or longer at every other book outside of Rivers out there. That number is just maybe the most unbettable futures number I've seen in all of the NFL markets that are available.
100%. And I'm glad you brought up the Panthers, because do I think they're going to win the division if they acquire Baker Mayfield? No, I'm not willing to go that far to bet them at 13-1 to win that division. But if Tom Brady gets hurt at 45 years old, all bets are off. So you never know. Yeah. There are some markets in the Panthers that have me very interested, though, because I think if they do acquire Baker, the numbers we're seeing now are going to be gone. This is a team that won 5 games last year. They went 5-12 with, I think, the absolute worst quarterback play you could have in the NFL last year. It was bad. It was
McCaffrey gets hurt as well.
Yeah.
Like a whole, there was just all. Terrace Marshall was never healthy. It was basically the worst case scenario for them.
And we're lined right now at BetMGM, our show sponsor, over 5.5 wins, minus 130. There's a minus 125 still out there for over 5.5. Those are the last 2 5.5s out there. The rest are at 6. So you're telling me that a healthy Baker Mayfield can't be 1 win better than what we saw the Panthers trot out last year? Like that's an easy bet for me. Like I don't bet win totals very often because I don't like tying up my money for an entire season. But the Panthers over 5.5 is very attractive to me. I do think that they get Baker at some point here. I think we're starting to see some negotiation on who's going to have to cover how much money in his 5th-year option. And let's not forget, you mentioned all the weapons they already have. They were just missing a quarterback. They added to the offensive line this offseason, and we're talking about a defense that was pretty darn good. Like, I know they had some easy opponents early in the year, but if you look at the entire season, it's hard to shoot many holes through a defense that finished 7th in EPA per play. They finished 4th in success rate. They finished 7th in drop back success rate on defense. So They have talent on that side of the ball. I literally think that this roster is a quarterback away from being a playoff contender in the NFC. And let's not forget Baker was playing completely hurt last season. If we get the healthy Baker that we saw from 2 seasons ago, absolutely the Panthers can be a playoff team, and we only need 6 freaking wins to hit the over on the win total.
Looking at the Bucks win total at 11.5 in this division that we think may not be as locked up as it seems. You can actually even see over at DraftKings the under money has started to come in on this Buck squad. The under 11.5 juice to minus 120 there. You can still find 110s on both sides. For me, Stephen, look, the under's the only way you can go, right? I mean, like, there's just I can't imagine betting an over. And so I need a 12 win team out of a team that, again, has to basically run pretty pure with a team that is fairly old. Now, they have got great players, but Mike Evans is no longer a spring chicken. Leonard Fournette is no longer a spring chicken. We talk about these defensive guys, Akeem Hicks, Vita Vea, Devin White, Levante David, Shaq Barrett. They're all great players. They are all not in their low 20s anymore, right? I mean, like, we're talking about, we need this team to run pretty pure from a health standpoint. It's under or nothing for me on Tampa for sure.
8 of their 17 games, pretty tough. At Dallas, against Green Bay, against Kansas City, hosting Baltimore, hosting the Rams, at Cleveland, at San Francisco, home against Cincinnati and Joe Burrow. And we didn't mention they still have to play the Saints twice, who they've struggled with in recent years. That's a really tough friggin' schedule to get to 12 wins.
Just as an overall, overarching deal here, if you're wondering what the Super Bowl odds are on all of the teams out there, which is, yes, they're already up. We understand it's early. The Bills are your favorite. The Bills come in, the highest you can find is a 7-1 on the Bills, 7.5-1 on the Bucks. The Chiefs are sitting at 10-1. So your third short shot in this is the Chiefs. Stephen, I can't get there with that. I think that is way too short in a division that I think is basically the division of death, and a conference that, as you just mentioned a few minutes ago, is so ridiculously deep. The 10-1 on the Chiefs, I think, is egregious, and no way in the world would I recommend that to anybody. I think you will get an exponential. If you're bullish on the Chiefs, I will go on record as saying you will get an exponentially better number on the Chiefs in season than you can find than you will get at 10-1 right now.
We did last year, and obviously they blew it and fell short against the Bengals. But when they had that slow start, I think we were seeing 15, maybe even 20 at one point when we thought they were going to have to go on a run just to make the playoffs. So it's possible. It happened last year. It could happen again. They have really tough opponents to start the year. First 5 weeks, Arizona, Chargers, Colts, Bucks, Raiders.
Yeah.
First 6 weeks. Oh my God. First 7 weeks before the bye for the Chiefs. Cardinals, Chargers, Colts, Bucks, Raiders, Bills, 49ers. That's insane, man.
You're going to get 16, 17, 18. You might even get 20-1 because they might come out of that stretch 4-3 and on a bad case scenario, 3-4. So I mean, like, again, do not bet the 10-1 right now. You are going to get a better number than 10-1. I can almost guarantee that. I think as far as the futures go from some of these teams out there, I mean, if you're looking to take a flyer, sometimes people want to have the long shot ticket in their account. I mean, at DraftKings, the Giants are 130-1. I think that division in general is up for grabs. Now, I have a ticket on the Eagles to win that division, but at the end of the day, we're just trying to get into the tournament here. And if you can get into the tournament, like as you mentioned, teams get hot and can rattle off a bunch of wins. I think Brian Dable I think he's sharp, and I think Dable is going to make a change to this Giants team. Now, is Daniel Jones terrible? We don't know. Like, he might actually be just terrible. And if that's the case, they're not going to win anything. But maybe Brian Dable, who, by the way, somehow being in a backup quarterback role, got Mitch Trubisky a starting gig in for the Steelers by just showing what he was able to do with him in pregame, in preseason stuff and mop up duty. I think Dayball's I think he's a sharp guy. And so it wouldn't surprise me if the Giants were able to at least compete in that division that I honestly believe is super up for grabs. And so I don't hate a super long shot ticket like that to have in the account. And then again, if you get to a point where they make the playoffs and start playing some, winning a game or two, then you can really hedge off and guarantee yourself a bunch of money. So just some thoughts there on a bomb if you're looking to make a bomb.
Giants with Dable or Panthers with Baker Mayfield, both 130-1.
Well, the only reason I say the Giants is just because I think that division is ripe for the picking, right? Like, I still think that's Tampa's division so long as Brady stays healthy and those receivers stay healthy and all that, which I know is a big ask because, again, they're all older. But the Cowboys lost a lot of players. Like, the Cowboys are not going to be near as good, right? And now the Eagles are much better. And again, I think they're my pick to win that division. But hey, again, Jalen Hurts might suck. That's the other thing, right? I mean, like, we think he's going to be better. All the signs point that he could be better, but he might suck too.
They're like the most run-heavy team in the league last year because they were concerned he sucked. That's when they started winning, when they stopped passing.
So I think that's fairly interesting. So again, bomb plays. We'll continue to talk. Listen, we're going to continue to talk NFL all the way up until kickoff. So just be sure and check out the lines and the podcast here, and we'll keep you updated on any bets that hit our accounts along the way. We just wrapped up the NBA season. We have the NBA draft that is coming to us, but it's never too early for the championship odds to come out, which they have already. The best you're going to find on the Warriors is 6-1 at DraftKings, Celtics 7-1 at FanDuel, Clippers 8-1 at Caesars, Nets 9-1 at Rivers. You can find the Bucks at 8-1. You can find the Suns at 10-1, and then everybody else is 16-1 or longer. Stephen, I think the only thing that I would say here, my caveat to any of this would be, if you are so inclined to get in on any of these teams, tread lightly with the Nets, because we do not know this Kyrie Irving situation with them. And he has the option to opt out. And if he were to leave that Nets team, that number is going to get monstrously bigger. And so I'm not going to say it's unbettable, because, hey, look, a 9-1 at Rivers actually is pretty enticing if this team is coming back as constructed, but we don't know that for sure. So just tread lightly there.
I'm from Philadelphia. I've gone through this process, and I've had enough of betting on Ben Simmons in any way, shape, or form, especially when it comes to the playoffs. So anybody that wants to bet the Nets next year with Ben Simmons, by all means, you have at it.
I'll tell you the team that intrigues me the most from a futures perspective that is at least relatively long shot. You can find a 22-1 on the Nuggets, and you can find a 60-1 on the Pelicans. And the Pelicans looked pretty damn good this year towards the end of the season, especially after they acquired McCollum and he got into the rhythm and all that. And they're going to get Zion back. They have a couple of young guys that contributed for them down the stretch last year as well. They'll have a year of experience under their belt. I'm not saying that the Pelicans are going to win the NBA championship. What I'm saying is if you played this season out 60 times, because you're getting a 6-1, I think they would win it 1 out of 60 times. And so therein lies at least a decent bet to have in your account. And further, it's because that number, which, by the way, you can find all the numbers over on the lines, is rogue, because most of the books are at 45-ish, 40, 45, there's a 50, but like 60 is a kind of a rogue number out there on the Pelicans. And I think at least they have a chance to be frisky this year.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you based on the rogue number. That's for sure. They have talent. They were pretty pesky down the stretch with McCollum added and, getting a big zero from Zion. So 3 times the odds almost as the Nuggets with their 2 big players coming back off of injury with Porter and Murray. So that's interesting to me for sure. It's just try to remember when you're talking about NBA futures that it's not often where you get a huge long shot winning the title. We could have situations like this past year where the Celtics get to the finals, but fall short. The year before, the Suns would have been the longest shot to win the title ever, fall short to the Bucks. So this is the one sport where it's rare for us to get a 40-1 shot or longer to win the title. So keep that in mind. All that being said, among the teams at the top of the board, to see the Milwaukee Bucks sitting as the 5th or 6th choice right now, around 8-1, with who I think is the best player on the planet in Giannis, and having suffered an injury to their second best player in Middleton in this postseason, that's interesting to me, because I think as fully constructed, maybe they add a couple more pieces this offseason. I don't know why they're behind the Clippers and the Nets.
Yeah, no, I think the Bucks, of the short shots, easy, like no brainer for me. That would be the bet for me of the short shots. Like not even a question. That would be the number that I would be taking, would be the 8-1 on the Bucks. We'll know more about these teams here in a couple of days, because we do have the NBA draft coming up. Now, listen, Steven and I are not NBA draft gurus. We're not going to pretend to be. There is content up over on the lines. Be sure, head over there, take a look. Look, there's 3 guys that could go number 1. It's not going to be anything. There's going to be nothing crazy happen here. It's either going to be Jabari Smith. It's either going to be Chet Holmgren, or it's going to be Paulo Banchero. Paulo Banchero's odds have plummeted over the last 72 hours. There's been some mock drafts come out that have him going number 1. There's been some big boards that have come out that said that he's the guy that can contribute the quickest. There's a bunch of stuff talking about the upside of Holmgren and the upside of Jabari Smith. So basically it just comes down to what the Magic want to do, whether they want to draft for upside or whether they want to draft for someone they think that can come in and contribute at the very beginning here, or hell, Steven, maybe they trade the pick out of there. Who knows? But again, we have content over on the lines. We're talking about it over in the Discord, things like that. You and I aren't going to sit here and pretend to be NBA draft gurus or anything like that.
For sure. And you can go to Twitter to our lead writer at Eli Hershkovich, college basketball guru, dipping his toes as well into the NBA draft here with his knowledge and a lot of contacts around the NBA industry. So you can follow him at Eli Hershkovich and check out what he's been writing about the NBA draft and odds, and a couple of lottery over-under bets that he likes as well.
Yeah, the interesting thing, really, if you want to watch the draft, is going to be what ends up happening at number 4, just from a fan standpoint, because the Kings currently hold the 4 pick, but the overall consensus 4 guy is Jaden Ivey. He's a guard. Of course, they already have De'Aaron Fox, and so it would be a very interesting. It's a very interesting pick, because the consensus here is that they would be looking to trade out. Who wants to move up into that number 4 spot and take a Jaden Ivey? Who could come in and kind of contribute, right off the bat here. He's 20, so it's not like he's a super young kid, a guy that can come in and help somebody out. So it looks like the Kings want to move that 4th pick. And so who decides they want to move up and take Jaden Ivey? So really, just from a fan standpoint, that will be the most interesting part of the draft, I think, is who makes that move. Because look, the Thunder ain't winning anytime soon. The Rockets ain't winning anytime soon. The Magic ain't winning anytime soon. But maybe a contender trades up into that 4 slot and tries to get a hold of Jaden Ivey. So that's the only interesting thing for me. Steven, any final words for you from the NBA draft?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
yeah. Whatever. I'll watch. We'll see what happens. Yeah, I'll watch. We'll see what happens. We'll go from there. Guys, want to close things out here, just talking a little bit about golf and just how we're going to approach it. As we close out the season here, we only have one major left. If you were following along with the mega pods, if you've been following along over on the Discord and all that, we hit Matthew Fitzpatrick this week. 7th outright pick for me this season. We've made a lot of money betting golf this year. Hopefully that carries over into NFL, but hey, betting can be a cruel bitch, and so maybe it won't. And maybe I'll get shot down and kicked real quick as to the reminder is how cruel betting can be. But Steven, I think for me, what I'm going to carry over here into this latter half part of the season is for my outright guys. I mean, literally, I'm going to have a very, very tough time betting on dudes without win equity. And you're going to look at me and you're going to say, Matt, that was Fitzpatrick's first major. 1, you're correct. 2, I bet that a month. I bet that a month before leading into the tournament based off of Fitzpatrick's form, and I was actually scared he was going to win a tournament between when I bet it and when the U.S. Open rolled around, and that I wasn't going to be able to get the number that I got. By the way, that number did go away. I got 39-1. It probably went off about 28-1 at most places like that. A low scoring grinder fest fits a guy like Fitzpatrick. He's never going to win a birdie fest. That's just kind of like the tournament played out is a good handicap that manifested. But from a golf standpoint moving forward, Steve, I mean, look, I love Will Zalatoris. I had an outright on him, so I was kind of free rolling there at the end of the U.S. Open. But that said, until he kind of gets over the hump, I'm fine betting top tens on him and cashing those tickets, or betting top fives on him, cashing those tickets and all that. But, I think that we do have to continue to think, if we're playing these outrights, what is the true win equity on these guys? How long can Zalatoris get by missing as many fairways as he does and just being able to play out of the rough and get these things in close and all that? Like, maybe he's just super special. Maybe he's a dude that will be able to make a career out of doing that, but not a lot of guys have been able to do that, right? I mean, like, sometimes you got to figure out how to get better. Sometimes you got to improve. And so until I kind of start to see that stuff, maybe he's not a guy that makes the outright card. Some of these other guys that you and I like to bet, the Lowrys of the world and the whatever and stuff like that, the win equity just so low on these dudes. And so I think I'm just going to, and I might miss out. I'm willing to miss out, but I think these guys are going to have to start falling off my card.
For sure. And to me, I think you're saying this without saying it, but a lot of it is dependent on the numbers we're getting too. And the reason I think you're saying that about Will Zalatoris is because, I've been a victim of it too. I had Will Zalatoris to win the Masters last year at 50-1, finished just short of Hideki Matsuyama. Had, I believe, a number close to 50-1 again for the Farmers Insurance Open. Couldn't make one more putt, and Luke List backdoors him and upsets him in a playoff. So, but now he's done that so many times that he's being priced like a multiple-time winner on the PGA Tour. So you're getting half the odds on him. Now the value's gone. So, it's always dependent on the number for me, because it's a lot easier to include a guy like that at 50-1 and still have a robust outright card than it is to include a guy like that at 25-1 and have to sacrifice a couple other names that have a pretty decent shot of contending in that tournament. So that's kind of the takeaways I've had on a guy like Will Zalatoris and a guy like Mito Pereira as well, that came close at winning in a huge number at the PGA. So, and the other holistic takeaway I have on this golf season is to be patient. Do not try and make up for a long streak of not hitting an outright by going harder the next tournament. You have to have patience, because you and I have had very similar opinions on a lot of these tournaments and a lot of players that we both played. It just so happens that you have 7 outrights and are running hot. I only have 3 outrights. And since my last outright, I've had 7 different golfers finish in second place or 1 stroke off the lead at the end of the tournament. So you have to trust your process if you're having results like that and not get frustrated. I'm thankful that I'm still scratching out a small profit on this golf season, and have to understand that not every year for me is going to be like it was last year when I had a 50 unit plus season. So trust the process and understand the game of golf and the way it's going to turn out sometimes. And I think the perfect example of that was the Matt Fitzpatrick, Will Zalatoris closing stretch in the U.S. Open, where it really came down to Matthew Fitzpatrick hitting a monster long putt. Without that monster long putt on the back 9 of the U.S. Open on Sunday, Will Zalatoris' putt would have been to win instead of having to survive and get to a playoff.
Yeah, and last thing for me, and we preach this every single time that we do these podcasts, but I want to drive it home in case these are first-time viewers or listeners, something like that. But please, please, please play the placement markets. Please keep your bankroll steady. And if you're only playing outrights, it's just drain. Like, try and understand that if you want to actually do this and make a profit and stuff, that you have to play these placement markets. You have to play the top 40s and the top 20s and the top, whatever, South Koreans.
Matt, can I ask you a question about that real quick? just to give the new bettors even further context. So you and I think typically we'll put 3 units on outrights every week. So how many units would you say you're mixing into these finishing markets just to kind of balance it out?
Yeah. So I put 10x into like placement and head to heads than I do into outrights, because that's just how I'm doing this to make a profit. Like I feel confident enough that I'm trying to like make a profit betting golf and stuff. And I know that I've done it long enough to know that you're only going to hit outrights every now and then. Right. And so like the only way to do that is feel confident in your read on the tournament and find some head to heads that you feel are favorable to you. Find some 3 balls, find these top 40 and top 20 markets that look like a little bit the numbers off or whatever, and tackle after those. So yeah, I mean, I'm much more heavy into that part of it than I am the outrights. And I understand it's not as sexy, because like everyone loves to cash the big tickets, the 25s, the 30s, the 40s, the 100 to 1s and things like that, whatnot. I get it. But, you know, one golfer out of 156 wins these tournaments, right? You know, like one guy out of 156, but you can get 40 guys finish in the top 40, or, you know, if there's ties, even more than that, and all that. So just, and all the way, also shout out to MGM, because they pay ties in full. So just keep that in mind as well if you're playing these, out there, to read your book's rules on dead heats and whether they pay ties in full or whether they chop it up, because you always, even if it's a slightly worse number, you always want the ties in full. So be sure and play those every chance that you get. Yeah.
And just to put a bow on it, for me, I want to share my personal story of when I first started betting golf and was, you know, betting very small amounts. You know, we're talking, I wouldn't bet more than $100 on an entire golf tournament, and was able to, over time, turn what started as $200 into 10,000 over, you know, 18 months or so. So at the very beginning for me, it was putting, you know, if we're using $100 as a baseline, $50 on outrights, $50 on the other markets. And trying to figure it out. Or you can even go a little less. You can go 40 on outrights and 60 on the other markets to try and balance that out a little bit. If you don't have the bankroll to put 10 units on every single golf tournament.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. And just, you know, we're trying as hard as we can as well to help out with all that. So just be sure and check out our content that we've got. And then over in the Discord, we got some good golf guys over there who like to sit and talk golf. And so, get some insight on the various things that they're picking up as well. Guys, if you're listening to this audio only, subscribe, rate, review. Do appreciate that. Would really enjoy that. All those 5-star reviews help us climb up the charts so people can find this thing. And if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And then if there's anything you want us to talk about, if there's any subject you want us to talk about as we lead into NFL season, any markets you want us to hit on, let us know in the comment section as well, because hey, look, we'll dive into it. If there's something you guys are interested in, we'll at least talk through it. There might not be a bet to be had in our opinion, but we'll at least talk through it and give you our opinion on what those things look like. So be sure to leave that in the comment section down below as well. If you want to follow Stephen on the Twitter machine at Stephen Andress 1, you want to follow me at Matt Brown M2. And until then, guys, good luck on all your bets.